Welcome to the Human Flourishing Project. I'm your host, Alex Epstein. Hopefully my voice is decent today. I was quite sick early this week, but have made a pretty miraculous recovery, which will actually be related to today's show, because today's show is my 2019 progress report, or I guess my 2019 quarter one progress report. And in particular, I want to talk about my progress on my New Year's resolutions. One great thing about having a weekly show on human flourishing is that I get to make public commitments and then be held accountable for them. And one thing I really enjoy is sometimes when I'll meet people or talk to people who listen to the show, they'll ask me, so how's it coming on your financial plan, or how's it coming with your doctor? And they'll often have good suggestions themselves. So I thought I'd tell you about my progress on the two big resolutions I made for 2019, and I'm generally very happy with the progress, as well as what I think is the biggest underlying cause of the success. And I think that could be particularly helpful. So my two big resolutions for the year were, one, make a long-term financial plan. And the context there was I felt like I'm pretty good at generating revenue, but I'm not as good at figuring out how to save for the long term. And I didn't really have any kind of good strategy for that. So I wanted some guidance there, and actually ended up getting some guidance from people who listen to the show. And then the other thing was I wanted to find a really good primary care doctor. Now, I mentioned I'm quite happy with the progress that I've made in both areas, but one interesting thing, which is probably a pretty common thing, is that in neither case has the progress taken the form that I expected. And it turned out that there were things that were better for me than the exact goal that I had. But setting the goal and then approaching it in a certain way, and most importantly, I think making that area a priority, led to a lot of good results. So before I go into the specific results, I want to talk about what underlying method I think allowed me to make good progress in these areas, and also make a lot of unexpected progress in other areas. And this method involves thinking about my life in a way that I discussed in the different New Year's resolutions episodes. And at a high level, it's that I think of my life in terms of three big categories. One is activities, two is foundations, and then three is companions. Activities, foundations, and companions. And then within activities, the big categories are creation, recreation, and rejuvenation. And then within foundations, there's the category of resources, environment, physical health, and mental health. And then with companions, there's romance, friends/family, and then coworkers. So I have these high-level categories, activities, and there are three of those: creation, recreation, rejuvenation. I have foundations. There are four categories: resources, environment, physical health, mental health, and then companions: romance, friends/family, and coworkers. So I when I was planning the year, or I actually focused on the first half of 2019, I set goals in all of those categories. And then I particularly talked about a certain goal within resources and then a goal within physical health. But I set goals in those categories. And one method that I implemented that I've talked about on previous show is that I dedicated Sundays to being what I call high altitude in those areas, which means that I'm thinking, I dedicate at least a little bit of time to thinking about each of those areas at a high level, and then seeing what I can do to move them forward at least a little bit. And what I found was, in a lot of these areas, I could make a ton of progress just by spending a little bit of time a week, because it turns out there's often a lot of high leverage activities that I can do if I do them once a week, that if I spend zero time, I'll make no progress. But if I spend 15 or 30 minutes, I'll make a huge amount of progress. So one example is with friends and family, just spending 15 or 20 or 30 minutes thinking about, hey, what kinds of activities do I want to do with friends and family, or how do I want to advance those relationships? Those decisions, that thinking can dramatically improve what happens in that area. So, for example, I have a very close friend and mentor, and now I have a monthly meeting with him, whereas before it was very hit or miss. Or I have a very good friend from high school whom I like to go snowboarding with and hang out with, but I often don't get to that. And now we've got a trip scheduled this year because not because I'm spending a huge amount of time, but because I'm revisiting these areas every week. And at a minimum, what I found is I can just make huge progress in life if I just do the following. And this is really the method that I feel keeps me on top of things. I just go every week, and I use the program Checkvist, CheckVist.com. That's my favorite list tool. So I find it very cool. So I just have something that's just called Planner. I just made a file called Planner, and I have those categories hierarchically. So I just have activities, and then creation, recreation, rejuvenation, and then foundations, resources, environment, physical health, and then companions, romance, friends and family, coworkers. And then just at a minimum, I actually do some more sophisticated stuff, but just as a minimum, I just every week will make a note on each category. And I'll start off with the higher level category and then go to the more specific one. And then I'll just say, this is my focus for the week. So I might just say, like last week in activities, this is pretty high level, but I'll just say lots of focused creative time. That was just that's what I really wanted to focus on for this week, because I felt like, okay, this is the kind of push that I need. And then maybe let's see, what did I do recently for physical health? It was just focusing on like optimizing what I was having for breakfast. I should actually give an update on what I've been eating lately, since it's changed a bit. And what I found is that just even by spending 5 minutes, even if I only spent 5 minutes a week on this, by having what are my goals for the year, having those, and then just having what's my focus for the week, that would be tremendous in advancing my progress. And I found that, okay, once I made my focus for the week, then that would naturally lead to the question of, okay, where does this go on the calendar? Because everything has to go on the calendar. Otherwise, it's not a real focus. And so then I'd create an item on the calendar, and I'm much, much more likely to get it done. So what I found is if I look at all of these areas, and in fact, I have an accountability call with a good friend of mine where we talk about progress in these areas. This year compared to last year has been dramatically different so far. And I largely attribute it to this focus, this weekly method of getting on top of things by just making weekly progress in these different areas. One addition to that is that in the creation category in particular, because that's a lot of my time in terms of work, I will also subdivide that into different categories and then have focuses on that. So just for my own part, I have consulting. So I'll have like a consulting fulfillment, and then what's my focus this week on consulting, and then speaking fulfillment, what's my focus on speaking. And then if I have public content, what's my focus on that? And I have management, and I have the book I'm working on, and another project I'm working on. So I have different kinds of things. So you can subdivide this, but the key thing is just a weekly high altitude check-in, and then planning, and just put something on the calendar, and then that can dramatically accelerate progress and just keep progress going. So now to the specific things, the specific resolutions that I made, because both of these have ended up in interesting ways. So one was the doctor resolution, and it was to find a really, really good primary care doctor. And I actually have not done this yet, but I went about improving this area, and I think I found a much more important thing, at least as a starting point, and then I can look into more primary care doctors. And without getting into too many specifics, like I had a primary care doctor I'd seen in the past that I thought was pretty capable, but it wasn't maybe my dream doctor. And I thought, okay, well, part of what was motivating this was I felt like, okay, there are certain health concerns and questions that I have, and I want really good feedback on them. And what I noticed what I was doing when I made this resolution, or after I made this resolution, I noticed, well, I'm avoiding going to a doctor because I don't have this perfect doctor yet. And that's insane, because even an average doctor is going to be way, way better than no doctor. And if it's an average doctor, if the doctor underperforms in a certain way, then and I'm not satisfied with it, then I can go get a second opinion, but I should at least go get a first opinion. And then I started thinking, oh, if I'm going to get a first opinion, I can get better at asking questions. And then I started getting better at asking the doctor questions. So I went to a primary care doctor that I was familiar with and started asking him about some symptoms. And I felt like I was better at asking questions. And then I actually got some really, really good answers that I was totally satisfied with and got referred to specialists on multiple issues. And this is good because there are just a bunch of things that I had nothing too concerning, but just a bunch of things that I just had uncertainty about. And is this an issue? Is this not an issue? And I ended up seeing 3 or 4 specialists in different fields. And it turned out that the doctor I was seeing gave me really, really good and thoughtful recommendations of specialists. So now I feel like, oh, I have really good go-to specialists in all of these different areas. And so the key thing turned out to be just every week revisiting this issue of physical health. Because when I did that and I revisited the goals and revisited the area, I would think, okay, well, what can I do? For instance, there are some issues with my eyes. Just thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to move the ball forward on my eyes? Or even recently, this sounds trivial, but when I moved back from San Francisco to Orange County, I was looking for, okay, I had this amazing dentist in San Francisco, and I felt like, oh, I wish I had one of her in Orange County, and I don't know anyone in Orange County that good. And then, but I hadn't gone to the dentist for over a year. And then I just had somebody research, okay, who's a great dentist? And I just found one, and it looks like they're going to be incredible, and I'll see them next week. That's just the kind of thing where this would get put on the back burner before, but because I have this weekly high altitude focus on every area of life, on every category of life, I'm able to move these balls forward. And thus I feel like in these different areas, I am making a lot of weekly progress. I'm seeing the doctors that I need to see. And now I think, yeah, I still want to look into what's available in terms of primary care doctors. And is there somebody I can make a long-term plan with? But I'm in a great health situation compared to where I was before. And it's particularly important because this year has been sort of a comedy of errors in terms of health, including I just injured my back a month ago and some other stuff. But fortunately, I've been getting really, really good attention, and I've had really good people when I have to react to something, but also to be proactive about other areas. Also, revisiting this has just developed the habit of seeing doctors more quickly, which I realized I had a bad habit of delaying medical consultation. And that relates to feeling pretty good today. About 2 days ago, even, I was feeling horrible. Like I just felt I had gotten sick I'd started having a lot of congestion on Sunday, and I just did really kind of standard, okay, I'm just going to take this medication and blow my nose a lot and occasionally take a shower and steam. But I realized later, wow, I'm not really thinking about how to handle this optimally. And then my sinuses got really dried out and I was having a lot of pain there. And I finally went to what I heard was a really good urgent care place. But on Wednesday, it just clicked with me because I'm in a more medical proactive mode. Hey, like let's talk to an expert, even if there's nothing wrong. It's worth getting really good feedback. And then my sister's a doctor, so I was able to talk to her. And then I ended up taking some measures that immediately made me feel better because I had gone a couple of nights with really bad sleep. And I look back on this and just note, if I had been more focused on getting expert advice early, it would have been better. And so I'm really happy that I'm developing the habit of doing that early. But now next time I'm going to be really on top of it because it really sucks being sick and I'm still in the prime of life. So I really want to enjoy that and spend as little of it being sick as possible. At some point, there's going to be a lot more, at some point in the future, there's going to be more kind of inevitable sickness. So I might as well deal with the good stuff. I might as well minimize any unnecessary sickness right now. So that's my medical goal. And in the realm of finance, I had a similar experience. I had this goal of making a financial plan. And that one I've done much more directly. Particularly, there's a listener of the show who reached out to me and offered me a pretty compelling approach in terms of helping me make a plan. And so we started talking, and I've just gotten a draft of the plan. And it's really interesting. So I'm really happy with the way that's going. But what I've really noticed is that actually the process of making the plan raised certain financial opportunities that I hadn't thought of, because I had thought of it as, okay, with the with the cash flow that I'm generating and that my business is generating, how can I be investing that better? But in doing the financial plan, the planner to his credit asked questions about, okay, the business and how is that working and what are you spending money on? And that actually made me think a lot more clearly about the business and looking at what actually generates the most revenue, most cost effectively for you. And I ended up investigating different assumptions about, okay, where does actually profit come from? How much of it is the speaking that I do or the consulting that I do or other things? And what inputs of our team, like what time that we spend is really improving the bottom line versus what isn't. And then if there is some other reason to do this stuff that isn't, but it really just made me analyze the business in a way that I'm very confident will make it much more profitable and focused in the future. And I didn't even know that there was this big an opportunity, but because I made this area a weekly focus and devoted time to it and devoted effort every week to saying, how can I advance my life in this area? I inevitably not only made progress on my explicit resolution, but I identified other areas of opportunity and was able to seize them. And then when I look at other areas of life, I see just these different areas like coworkers, romance, friends, family. I can think of examples in all of these areas where I've improved these areas, where I've been more opportunistic in a good sense, mental health as well, where just on a weekly basis, I'm thinking about it and I'm just thinking, what can I do to move the ball forward? And sometimes I don't have that much time, or there might even be a setback, like physically. A lot of my recreational stuff is highly physical and I hurt my back, which is really hard to do a lot during. But even there, I ended up making sure that I walked a lot, just because that would at least make me feel pretty good by comparison. And I actually got to, I now enjoy walking around even more, which I enjoyed a lot in the past. Anyway, environment, certainly I found a new place that's really, really good. Resources, I mentioned, the progress that I've made, rejuvenation. So I'm just finding that this weekly altitude on every area of life is so valuable. And I'm glad that I'm no longer making the mistake of thinking that if I don't have a lot of time to devote to an area, then I might as well devote no time to the area. And I'm realizing with many areas of life, sometimes 5, 10, 15 minutes, that can move the ball forward. And the more that we are on the premise of having others help us in different ways, and if you have any kind of assistant, that can be really, really helpful in these areas. But even if you don't, there's just a lot of high leverage progress that can be made. So I'm very happy with the progress I've made in the first almost 3 months of this year, particularly on the 2 resolutions. But the biggest thing I'm happy with underlying that is just this method of weekly altitude. So I've mentioned that in the past, but I wanted to just give an update that this weekly altitude across the different categories of life, including activities, including foundations, including companions, that is a big winner in my experience. And so I plan to continue it indefinitely. And I hope that many of you try it and benefit from it. Okay, that is our show for today. As always, if you have any questions, comments, love mail, or hate mail, you can email me at alex@alexepstein.com. Please comment or discuss these issues on the Facebook page. That's at facebook.com/Human Flourishing Project. And if you want weekly updates, including announcements of the latest episodes of the show, go to Human Flourishing Progress. Oh, wow, I am off today. And a little bit. Maybe it's the sickness. HumanFlourishingProject.com. I will be back next week with another great topic. Not sure what it is. Maybe Arnold Bennett Part 3. But in any case, until then, I'm Alex Epstein. This has been the Human Flourishing Project.